Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in less than 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. Today we are talking about everything from an unprecedented op-ed about the president and a Toyota recall to a controversial commercial and New York Fashion Week. Those stories and many more in less than 10 minutes. Plus, hang out after today's news for a bonus interview about the business of fantasy football on the day the NFL season starts. I'm Erica Mandy. Today is Thursday, September 6th. You ready? Let's do this. It's a big deal New York Times op-ed where a senior Trump administration official wrote serious and negative things about the president. The official said Trump has, quote, misguided impulses, and his actions are, quote, detrimental to the health of our republic. The official explained there's a resistance within the White House, people who want the administration to succeed but often feel obligated to work against the president. And the official added, quote, Americans should know that there are adults in the room. An op-ed like that is unprecedented. The article was anonymous with only the title of a senior Trump administration official. The Times said it only allowed it because the person's job would be at risk if the identity was revealed. And President Trump hit back with that, calling it a gutless editorial and, quote, really a disgrace. He even tweeted, quote, treason, ? Some called for the official, whoever it is, to resign. Day 3 now of confirmation hearings for the Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. Yesterday, senators got to question him publicly. Things he would say, he's independent, his loyalty is to the Constitution, and he has an open mind. What he would not answer, questions about the investigations of President Trump, and if the president should be allowed to pardon himself, or if he would have to respond to a subpoena. Kavanaugh needs a majority of senators to vote for his confirmation in order for him to replace retired Justice Anthony Kennedy. As for the hearings with the big names in big tech, it went pretty much as expected. There were a few heated questions from lawmakers, but no major mess-ups from the tech execs. Facebook's Sheryl Sandberg and Twitter's Jack Dorsey were there to talk election security. Lawmakers made it known they were annoyed with Google's CEO for not accepting the invite. They even left an empty chair. A plane coming from Dubai with hundreds of people on it had to be quarantined at JFK Airport in New York. The pilot called in that several people had flu-like symptoms. It was once reported that as many as 100 people were sick. But it turns out it wasn't really anything too serious. CBS News reports 10 people went to the hospital, but they should be okay. Officials think they may have just had the flu, maybe even before they got on the plane. But they're waiting on final test results. Most travelers, though, were able to go on their way. You can expect to see a controversial commercial when the NFL regular season kicks off tonight. ESPN says Nike's 2-minute ad will feature Colin Kaepernick, an extension of the campaign we talked about earlier this week that caused some mixed reactions. Some people praised the brand and others destroyed their Nike clothes. Remember, Kaepernick is the former NFL quarterback who was the first player to kneel during the national anthem before games, protesting racial injustice. No team has signed him for nearly 2 years now, and he's also suing NFL owners. Some, including President Trump, have called the kneeling disrespectful to the flag and country. Well, now Kaepernick is a big part of this new Nike TV ad with other star athletes like Serena Williams. It's set to debut on TV tonight during the game between the Falcons and Eagles and other sporting events as well. Oh, and speaking of the NFL opener, the AP reports fans can now watch the games online without a subscription for the first time, meaning you don't have to log in with a cable or satellite account to be able to watch, at least on your phone or tablet. The AP says it's to help capture more of the online audience since TV ratings for football games have been going down. But that doesn't necessarily mean the NFL isn't making more money. Some ad prices are reportedly going up next year. A quick thank you now to our sponsor, Million Pound Mission and the Transformation Reboot Program. My friend Adam Shively is on a mission to help people around the world, including you, live a healthier life. And he's already doing it with his Million Pound Mission podcast. People have left reviews saying this is not just about diet and fitness, it's about why you might fail and the mental part of it. Adam knows how important that is because he lost 100 pounds himself, and then he became so passionate he started helping others do the same. And now he's offering a new 2-phase program called Transformation Reboot. He makes it clear this is not just a new diet or a new fitness program. Instead, it's designed for the person ready to get out of the vicious cycle of weight loss and regain once and for all. And at last check, there are only 20 spots left in this program, so head on over to millionpoundmission.com to learn more about this, see if it's right for you. Again, it's called the Transformation Reboot Program. And of course, while you're at it, check out the Million Pound Mission podcast. All right, now back to the news. There are 2 recalls to tell you about. First, Toyota says it'll be recalling more than 1 million cars around the world. Reuters reports in the U.S., it affects nearly 200,000 Priuses. There's apparently an issue with the engine that could be a fire risk. Second, the CDC is reminding people about a recall of Kellogg's Honey Smacks cereal. USA Today says more people are still getting sick, even though it was recalled earlier this year. The cereal may have salmonella. So far, so good. The TSA says it plans to expand the 3D luggage scanning program that it's been testing over the summer at about a dozen airports. Now the plan is to roll out 3D luggage scanners to a couple hundred airports by next year. TechCrunch reports 2D scanners take photos from just a couple of angles, but these 3D scanners are able to take hundreds of images per second with a spinning X-ray camera, making the image of the bag interactive so staff members can rotate it and look around. TSA officials say it not only improves security, but it can also mean, at least in the future, that you won't have to take so many things out of your carry-on bag, like liquids and electronics. Get ready for Serial Season 3. Yes, the latest season of the hit podcast Serial debuts September 20th. And it'll be a bit different this year. Variety reports, instead of telling just one story throughout the whole season, it'll follow many different stories within the Cleveland, Ohio court system. Each mini-story lasting just 2 or 3 episodes. The first season of Serial launched back in 2014, and it was a huge hit. It focused on the murder conviction of Adnan Syed, and spoiler alert, the show led to a retrial that's still pending. There's even an HBO documentary now that's following that case. New York Fashion Week is here, and the celebrations will include a Central Park party for the brand Ralph Lauren, which is turning 50. And that's it for the main news today, but it's now time for Thing to Know Thursday, where a different expert explains a different thing to know every Thursday after the news. And this week, we are talking about the business of fantasy football. Fantasy football, of course, is when you pick players from real NFL teams to join your fantasy team, then get points when they play well in real life. So we're talking about this today because 1, the NFL season starts today, and 2, this is big business. It may even get bigger because remember, states are now allowed to legalize sports gambling. So even if you're not a football fan, this is good stuff to know. And if you are a fan, stick around until the last question for expert tips you can use for your team this year. My guest today is Mike Wright. He's the co-creator of the award-winning and popular podcast, The Fantasy Footballers. Hi, Mike. Thanks so much for coming on The Newsworthy.
Oh, I appreciate the invite. Thank you.
So I want to start with a couple of news items related to fantasy football. The NFL has dealt with a lot of controversies. We've heard about concussions to players kneeling during the national anthem. Do you think fantasy football has been impacted at all by some of those controversies? Because from what I've read, the number of people playing fantasy football is going up every single year.
I would not say it's being negatively affected. I know that there are a lot of people out there who are being very vocal with their opinion, but at the end of the day, the numbers are just going up. We can see that the numbers of fantasy football players are going up. The NFL does not seem concerned at all. They said that their revenue is going up each and every year. So while I agree that these are important issues, I don't think it's actually affecting revenue from both the fantasy industry and the NFL.
So if it's growing, who is flocking to fantasy football? How is it growing? What are the demographics?
Sure. It definitely skews. It's still heavier for males as the NFL is. But we see it on our show that more and more ladies are joining the fold, which is fantastic. We try very, very hard on the fantasy footballers that our show is for everyone. We keep it clean so that we know that dads can throw the show on when they're in the car. And we're trying to change the culture because fantasy football, for a lot of people, because they don't know much about it, when they hear fantasy football, they think, okay, it's overgrown man baby in mom's basement. So we're really working on changing that and helping people know that, no, really, everyone plays fantasy football. One of the shocking's the wrong word, but that's all I can think of right now. But an interesting thing for us has been we get contacted from every way of life. We've been reached out to by high-profile lawyers who love fantasy football. They like the show and they just want to talk football, get our advice on something, all the way to like real blue-collar workers saying, "Hey, man, thank you for the show. Really helps get me through my day." So it's fascinating that fantasy football, it really is an equalizer that all walks of life, we can all come together and celebrate this absolutely ridiculous game. The game about a game that we play, that we care about probably far too much, but it's just so much fun and it really enhances the sporting weekend. But it's amazing how anyone could play. If you have internet access, you can play fantasy football.
How much money goes into fantasy football each year?
As an industry, we belong to a group called the Fantasy Sports Trade Association. From their research, you're talking this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's like you said, it's still growing. So it is a massive, massive deal. Even if you are not playing, there's lots of money, and for individuals, it's really per person because. Even though I'm an expert or, what quote unquote expert in this space, this is what I do for a living. I still don't wager or invest very much money at all. I have one league. It's my main money fantasy football league, but it's still very low stakes. I think the buy-in's maybe $70. But on top of that, that's really all I spend. But before I had my show and we offered our premium information, I was out there buying draft kits and spending money on all of that. So that's also included in that revenue. When people think fantasy, they think, oh, just I'm winning money in a league. But no, there's news out there. There's entertainment providers. There's all sorts of things that you can spend some of that extra money on.
On the topic of money, let's talk about sports betting, because in May, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the law that made sports betting illegal, which essentially means that states now have the option to make sports gambling legal and doing it out in the open at businesses. So do you think this will impact how and where you'll be playing fantasy football in the future? And if so, what do you think it'll look like?
So I do not believe that fantasy football in the season-long format is going anywhere. What will change, you're going to see changes in more of that daily fantasy type of space. And what I mean by that is instead of just having to set a lineup every week, you're going to have things like over-unders on a player. So will Andrew Luck throw 2 touchdowns this week? You're going to be able to put a bet down on that, where it's kind of merging the old school betting of just who wins this game with fantasy football, which is all, will a player actually hit this statistical baseline? But so I believe that that's kind of the biggest change that will come about, the innovation that will happen in the sports betting industry.
All right, so now for the listeners who have not drafted their teams yet, give me one favorite early round pick and a potential late round pick that's really going to help someone's fantasy team take home the championship.
All right, so if we're talking about an early round pick, so now we're back in my real wheelhouse. So in fantasy football right now, there is considered the big 4. It's the first 4 picks, and they're all running backs. You have Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, Todd Gurley, and Ezekiel Elliott. Those are the 4 that go first in, I would say, 95% of drafts. Le'Veon Bell is looking a little shakier with not reporting to the team still. The player in the first round that I think is very, very close to those players. So if you draw the 7th pick, do not despair, because Melvin Gordon, running back for the Los Angeles Chargers, I believe is very, very close in value to those big 4 running backs. And then in the middle rounds, I'll throw out a tight end that we love on this show. His name is Trey Burton. Not everyone knows about him, especially the casual players. He just signed a pretty lucrative free agent deal with the Chicago Bears. He's been a career backup in Philadelphia, but he has always performed when he was called upon. Zach Ertz, the starting tight end for Philadelphia, missed a few games. Trey Burton came in. The team didn't miss a beat, and Burton was very viable for fantasy football. So going in that 7th round range, I think that Trey Burton is absolutely worth the draft pick.
Thank you so much for the great information.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
You can read more about today's guest and find links to the Fantasy Footballers podcast in today's show notes. That's also where you'll find links to all of the news stories we talked about in this episode from the homepage of thenewsworthy.com. Click episodes and then find today's date. Thank you so much for listening. The Newsworthy is ready for you by 4 in the morning every weekday, updating you on all the news you need to know. So we'll chat again tomorrow. Have a great day.